back into the builds we go. For today's build, we are going back to Warlock, and we are back with Arc. Very surprising considering how Arc is probably the... Actually, I don't know. Void is kind of bad. The only thing good about Void on Warlock is Devour, but I digress. Anyway, for today's build, we are using the lovely Necrotic Grips with not a Thorn, but a Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo is not necessary, but Monte Carlo makes this build 10 times better. Now, before we get into all the major stuff, let's go to the Necrotic Grip. So for the Necrotic Grip, basically what it does, it poisons enemies whenever you melee them, and whenever you kill an enemy that has a corrupting effect on them, it spreads the effect to nearby enemies. So it's AoE, and it restores your melee energy whenever it does that. So very good for melee oriented builds, and we are going to be maximizing that melee potential with Middle Tree Arc, with Ball of Lightning. Basically, this build is Top Tree Dawnblade, but Arc version, without the dashes, and better grenade cooldown. Essentially, our Necrotic Grip plus Ball of Lightning, as well as our Monte Carlo, are all going to be correlating together to get us our melee back 24/7, along with some mods that I'll go over in just a little bit. Now with this, we are going to be taking advantage of Ionic Trace as well to get us our grenades as well as our Rift back very frequently. Other stuff in the skill tree don't really matter, and something that I actually just realized is that whenever you get kills with Chaos Reach, they explode, kind of like Dragonfly or Firefly. I've been playing this game since Chaos Reach came out and never knew that. I'm an idiot. Anyway, moving on to weapons, Monte Carlo. I was saying how this is going to be our main way to get our melee back extremely fast, and I say that because whenever we get kills with a Monte Carlo, it has a chance to fully recharge our melee ability, and whenever we deal damage with it, it reduces our melee cooldown, so it is amazing for getting melee charges back on any class you're using. It also has a nice little perk called Markov Chain, which is basically Grave Robber, so whenever we use our melee, we're going to be reloading our Monte Carlo. Now with the Monte Carlo, we are using Martyrs Retribution, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, alongside Tomorrow's Answer. Doesn't matter what perks you're using, it just works with what we're doing in the build. Try to get good perks on your grenade launcher. Rocket launcher doesn't matter at all. Our rocket is our main source of DPS. Moving on to stats, I chose to spec into strength as well as recovery. Now the reason why I chose to spec into these two is because strength, obviously, it's a strength build, so we're using our melees and we want our melees back as fast as we possibly can. And recovery, because recovery also gets us our strength back. Yet another way to get our melee ability back if we are using an arc bond with a perk called Outreach, which I'll get into a little bit later. Also, by the way, going back into weapons just real quick, you can use a rocket or a sword. Doesn't matter which, I'll go over it in just a little bit, but basically a rocket and a sword are our main sources of DPS. Doesn't matter which one you choose, personal preference or situational, it is 100% up to you. They both work. Anyway, going back to stats, aside from recovery, you can also spec into discipline if you can, as well as intellect, but intellect probably not, that's kind of reaching. So I would go into recovery, strength, or discipline. All the perks that all the stats you're going to be recharging very constantly because you're going to be using every single one of your abilities pretty frequently because of Ionic Traces in Middle Tree. And finally, going into mods. I'll go over the Charge of Light mods first, and then I'll go over some side mods that I think are important as well, but those aren't as necessary as the Charge of Light mods. So first Charge of Light mod I want to go over is how we're actually getting all of our Charge of Light stacks. Blast Radius. So you can swap between Blast Radius or Sustained Charge, but I prefer Blast Radius because it is much easier to become charged with light, because we're going to be using our grenade launcher and even our rocket launcher very frequently to get kills whenever we're not using our Monte Carlo, so having Blast Radius is very helpful. However, if you have multiple solar armor pieces, I would recommend going Sustained Charge instead. Now I say multiple solar pieces because you should run Sustained Charge with multiple different armor pieces, and I say that because kind of like the fine print of this mod that I never actually knew is that additional copies of this mod increase the time allowed between combatants that are defeated. So I'm gonna be honest, I think this mod kind of sucks, especially with Monte Carlo, because Monte Carlo is not too fast of a shredder when it comes to enemies, depending on the activity. But if you're getting rapid kills very easily, and if you want to become charged with light from using your Monte Carlo, and you only want to become charged with light while using your auto rifle, then I would go with Sustained Charge. I hate it. I don't hate it. Hate is a strong word. I dislike it, and I like Blast Radius more, so that's what I'm using. Up to you though. Next Charge of Light mod that I want to go over is Heavy Handed. Heavy Handed, we get half of our melee charge back whenever we use our melee charge, consuming 1 stack of Charge of Light, so that helps us get our melee back super fast. And the last Charge of Light mods that I want to go over are Agent Ordnance as well as Lucent Blade. Now either one of these two will work. Like I said earlier, you can run a grenade launcher or a sword depending on what you want want to run. It's personal preference, and it's pretty situational, to be honest, but it varies. Loosened Blade increases our sword damage for 5 seconds, consuming 1 sec of charge with light. An agent ordnance while charged with light, readying or firing a rocket launcher grants it increased damage and reload speed. So both work. I would recommend going with Loosened Blade just because it is an arc armor slot, and we need arc to actually make another feature of this build work, which is the outreach part of it. Reduces melee cooldown when using your class ability. This is an arc mod, so using this alongside Loosened Blade is ideal, but it is not necessary. You do not need every single mod to get your melee back. In fact, you don't need any mods to get your melee back if you don't want, because Monte Carlo is enough alongside heavy-handed, but it's here if you want it. So if you want to run outreach, then Loosened Blade is what you want to go most of the time. But I switch between the two. Just like in the gameplay that I'm actually showing, I'm not going to sword the boss, so I'm using Argent Ordnance. I think I said agent multiple times. I'm stupid. I've been over this. But Argent Ordnance is what you want to use for those bosses that you can't sword down. All right, moving away from that, the other mods that I want to go over are Radiant Light. It's a charge of light mod. I just forgot about it, but it gives us 20 extra strength. So if you need that extra strength, this is how you get it. And I would also run Momentum Transfer if you can, because this is another way to get our melee back whenever we deal damage with Arc Grenade. So yet another way to get our melee back. So unnecessary, but it's cool and fun. And the last thing I want to go over is Hands On, which just gets us extra super energy whenever we get melee kills. I have 2 of them. You only need to run 1, but running 2 gets us around 1.5 or 1.4, around that range, times extra, aside from only having that 1 times extra from having 1 Hands On mod due to diminishing returns, cause Bungie. And yeah, that is the build. If you liked this video or found it helpful at all, please make sure to leave a like and comment. I love responding to comments, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask, because I love helping people out. If you did not enjoy this video, or if you found it dumb, sorry, but your time is now mine. Thank you, and do come again.
It's mine.
I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.